but for a 5-year-old, they're awesome.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a Yuletide Slender Man.
Right. Oh my god, that's so true.
When the distance grows, but the end is in sight. Nothing left to lose when there's nothing left to find. Now all is left behind, something to remember me by. Two sides of a double life, something to remember me by.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the End Podcast bonus episode. I call them bonus episodes, but sequentially, it's just the next most recent episode. But I like to make you feel like we're giving you something special, a little bit extra. And today's bonus episode is for Spider-Man No Way Home, and Not Far From Home, which I titled incorrectly 2 YouTube videos. So yeah, No Way Home, that's what we're talking about. With me as always is my gorgeous, stunning and elegant co-host Tim. Tim, how are you today, darling?
Nah, Merry Christmas. Come in, man, and know me better. I had to bring out the Ghost of Christmas Present for this. Are you familiar with that? Is that
not really? I mean, I liked it. Oh, there's no two ways about it.
It's from A Christmas Carol. The Ghost of Christmas Present tells Scrooge to come in, man, and know me better.
Right.
And I was watching Muppet Christmas.
We're talking traditional Muppets or Bill Murray Scrooge.
Scrooge is so good, but this one I was watching Muppets Christmas Carol, Ghost of Christmas Present. Does a really good job with that, so it was on my brain. I'm great. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little bit weary. I had a family Christmas do last night, so I'm not hanging out my arse, but I'm certainly not standing on my own 2 feet either. So let's get things moving. So we are the End Podcast. We are on all your favorite streaming services. Not streaming services. We're not on Netflix. Let's get this right. That was bad. That was bad wordage. We're on all your favorite podcast locations. Podcast locations. We collate art on Instagram. We write reviews on Twitter. And yeah, we just do a real good job of it. We have the End Pod Shorts on YouTube, so give us a click, give us a follow. I mean, there's a lot of people that are listening to this. I've got the analytics. Now, I need you to start clicking that subscription button, guys. I need you to do it. You're going to do it for it's Christmas, come on. Even if you trim the fat as people do in the new year, you want to drop those podcast pounds, get rid of us then, but just give us a chance, baby. You've clicked on us already, you're listening, the hard work's done. You've asked us out. We've said we'll go to the dance with you. Just reply yes. Thumb it. Thumb it and bum it, baby. So, today, Tim, Spider-Man. Did you like the film?
Matt, I know there's some recency bias, right? Anytime you see something. I saw this yesterday afternoon. But I have to say, my expectations for this were really high. And I do think it is the pinnacle of the superhero genre. And shows you just what it can achieve. It's not a flawless movie, but it was an incredible experience. What's your view?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I adore this film. I don't have any children, but I can only liken it, what my expectations are, to the birth of a first child. I was overcome with emotion in ways I wasn't expecting. It was sad, it was exciting, it was heartwarming, it had everything, and I'm generally, when something swings this hard, and I always like things that swing hard. That's why my balls are so
except
big.
Journal. I don't want to derail us already.
You had to spoil it, didn't you? You had to spoil it. Funnily, friend of the pod, Shane, did a double bill. He went to see Eternals and No Way Home back to back. And he said categorically he just saw the worst and the best MCU films.
Well, I definitely think he saw the best MCU film, and it's not Eternals.
Yeah, just to be clear, yeah, it was that way around. Now, look, guys, I'm going to put this up from it's spoilers. Take responsibility for your own experience. Because sometimes people don't mean to give spoilers. Well, we will. And we are going to spoil the fuck out of this film. And I don't know when it's going to happen. Timestamps below. Fast forward. Oh, no, there's nothing else, is there? There's nothing else today. So just come back to us. Oh, fuck it. Yeah. Listen to it. I don't care if I spoil your experience. It's all clicks. Clicks and listens. But yeah, we're going to be talking about it. We'll probably try for the first part to just give a brief explanation. And then we'll go heavy spoilers undeterminate point in the future. With expectations, clearly there was a lot spoken about this, to the point where the coverage of this made me unfollow Scooper YouTube. It made me sick to the back teeth. That it made me say, it's just a Spider-Man film. I loved it. All the reveals worked. Nothing was obligatory. Nothing seemed like it was put in as fan service. Any person that had any agency in this film, it worked. Like, nobody just ran through the motions and somebody just popped up, and then they went. Every single person in this film had a job to do and fulfilled it impeccably. And let's not forget as well, this is a really, really important thing. Everybody said Justice League couldn't work because you're introducing too many characters. They said that Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't work because it was overpopulated. This just goes to show you can have as many characters in a film as you require, as long as they are integral to the plot and not just brought in because they think that's what people want to see.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Let me just also say, I like you, did the whole thing where I basically shut myself off from rumors about this movie. So I did not get push notifications from any of these like Scooper YouTubes. I did the thing where I filtered out everything on Twitter. What I didn't do, Matt, is I didn't filter out my, like, whenever I got my iPhone, wherever the fuck that was, okay? It's like they ask you, like, do you want to do push notifications for these like different news or whatever? So I do like CNN and like Washington Post. So I didn't think about this. And not yesterday, it was like 2 days ago, I got a push notification. I'm just like look down. So I think I'm fine, right? And I look down. Meanwhile, by the way, 2 years basically of me being effectively completely blind about this. I didn't watch the trailers. I didn't do anything. Yeah. I looked down to a push notification from, I believe it was like whatever it was. It was either CNN or Washington Post, which are the two ones I have. And it says, like, Feige confirms this X fact about Spider-Man No Way Home. And I fucking went ballistic because it was something truly critical, something I expected but did not want to be confirmed. And I was just so angry. Like, it just goes to show you how hard it is to be blind to this, even if you're trying to be.
And I feel, I've said before, we need to be better protected. And I know this isn't like a big deal, life goes on, but these things are important. They're important to us, and that's the scale of how probably comfortable my life is. But it's important. The thing that wound me up the most was on Venom 2 with the post-credit scene. And Google, because it knows my searching habits, is Instagram influencers in their underwear. Or comic book stuff, right? So,
right.
And I went on to Google, and the first thing suggested article was the post-credit screen from Venom 2, 10 days before the film came out. I was absolutely livid. However, somebody said to me, what you need to do is, after the press screening or before it, put Google and Safari on incognito or private browsing, and that will take care of it. But
you shouldn't have to know that. You know,
exactly what I was about to say. It shouldn't be my responsibility. Yeah. They used to get them to sign NDAs when they went in.
Right.
And they still have to put their phones in like plastic bags, and they get them back afterwards for the screens. But I just feel we're in a position now. This year has been the worst for it. And I think we said in a previous episode, the reason for this is that Feige doesn't usually have subcontracted visual effects people or CGI people, but because there's such a crunch at the moment, look at what's happening with Doctor Strange, and also because this was Sony, they've brought in CGI contractors for Venom and this, that it means that they don't have jobs to worry about. They'll just go back to whatever their agency is that sent them there. And I think Grace Randolph makes the point perfectly. And I've said in the past that really the Marvel films are as much animated as the Lion King inverted commas live action is, because it's sort of everything's redone, all the costumes are redone in post, and it's all done on green screen. So if the people are being redrawn in CGI and everything's on green screen, then what's left? Nothing.
Right.
Their faces. So they're still programming these films as if they are live action, when really, which would be typically a year's primary photography, principal photography, and post-production, whereas really it needs to be the 2 years that's given to any animated film. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more crunches. And look, the industry's only getting bigger and bigger, and it's a finite resource of people who are technically adequate enough to do this.
Other than that, I just want to clarify, I got that push notification before the movie came out. So it's not like I saw it yesterday, right, after the movie was released. So I just find the whole thing, like, even if you're really, really trying your best to avoid something, it's very, very difficult to do. Now, these are things that this one particular element of it, I expected, to see, but I did not want to be confirmed. I wanted to be like truly surprised. And now, having said that, when I was in the movie theater and this thing did happen, it's like I knew it was going to happen, but I was still, its execution was like truly wonderful. So it wasn't ruined for me, but I don't know. I don't know. We beat this horse many times, but
it was the Harry Styles thing. It wasn't the Venom thing, actually. It was Harry Styles is in the MCU, and it's like right. I forgot about it. It's probably because I was so bored in Eternals that I forgot about it, and I was just worrying about how quickly I could get out there. And then when Harry Styles appeared, I was like, oh, there's Harry Styles. So, but I mean, that doesn't have the impact. Yeah, all the guest appearances and the surprises in inverted commas, like big surprises, as they say on the John Campea show. The way they executed them was just perfect. And British cinemas don't whoop and cheer. There was a lot of whooping and cheering in my showing. It really. People fucking loved it. And it felt like some of the reactions were genuine surprise, because you forget that we're so deep in the culture of
Totally.
You're not your normal dude that's just going to watch the new Spider-Man film, that's not necessarily following things on YouTube and whatnot. When one of the people appeared, the first big reveal. Well, let's say there was a reveal. Okay, cool. But the first big people were like, "Oh my god!" And they actually could not believe it. Yeah, it was. I'm smiling ear to ear talking about it now. It's just It's just like so. It's just kind of got this warm glow. My emotions just thinking about the film.
A movie like this, you realize, it's often hard to articulate the difference between a movie you really like and a movie that you love and means something to you, and it is that like warm glow. Like right now, I'm like so excited, like in my life, because of this movie. It's like I love this movie. It's like it is a distinction between, like, let's say like Eternals I liked much more than you did, and I liked it was kind of ambitious, and I had fun watching it, but this is like 50 standard deviations above that, like how much greater this is, and how much more fun it was, and how much more it meant to me to watch. They just crushed it. And I know I'm probably blind to fan service, and I'm sure like an objective reviewer will point out to me all the ways I've been serviced in this movie, but I don't give a shit. I love being serviced like anyone else, and the reveals were spot on, truly moved me in many ways.
My dad is a fairly phlegmatic, I wouldn't go as far as stoic person, but he has a very come what may attitude with things. Yep, could be worse, could be better, sort of thing. And he called me pissing like with excitement. He was just like, I could almost feel him shaking. And he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I can't believe it." And I'm like, "What's happened? What's happened?" And he goes, I just can't believe it. It's unbelievable." I was like, "Dad, what's happened?" And he goes, "I've just come out of Spider-Man. It is absolutely brilliant." At the end of it, he said, "I had to stop myself crying." And this is my dad. Like I said, he is not a publicly emotional man, unless he's down the King Power Stadium and Leicester have just scored the last minute winner. But that's more of like a release, isn't it? Yeah, you do have all the jokes and the quips, and that's what I liked about this. This was the first time, and I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. There's characters that I love. When Bernthal was confirmed to be the Punisher, I messaged him on Twitter and said, "Don't fuck this up. This is my chance. This is my chance to get a fucking Punisher that I can." It was overwhelming because it was still in the days of not everything's being turned into it. Never thought I'd see anything. I mean, I really liked the Ray Stevenson Punisher. I thought that was the most accurate portrayal until... I still probably like that a little bit more than the series, but they are both brilliant portrayals of the Punisher. Thomas Jane was fine, but it was a lot more of a comic book adaptation, if you know what I mean, as opposed to a Punisher. It's what people expected from a comic book adaptation.
Yeah.
I'm not emotionally invested in Spider-Man. I've been really critical of Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU previously. He's whiny. Every key relationship he has, he is subordinate in. That's why I liked Andrew Garfield, because he was cocky, he was quippy, even when he's in the absolute peril. But when it came to it, he stood up and it was like, now it's time to go. Now it's time to get serious. This is where this is the money shot. Do you know what I mean? And
totally.
I get why people didn't like his Peter Parker, because, look, he was a guy that was knocking on 30 playing a 16-year-old. Ridiculous. I don't know why Hollywood still do that. But it's probably to make them relatable to a bigger audience, I suppose. So you're not watching a children's film because it has children in it.
Right.
But children's. Children's. I like the children's. But with Tom Holland, first of all, he was introduced in Civil War. And he was good in that. The Russos wrote him really well. He was quippy. And that's what I wanted from a Spider-Man. And also it had the insecurity of Peter Parker. So he's already been through that situation, and then he subordinates himself to everybody in the first Spider-Man, in Spider-Man Homecoming. Then he goes and fights Thanos. Is a key part of the whole of the premise in the first film. And he has one of the best individual shots where he's like saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Stark," or whatever it is. And then he comes back, and my cinema, the midnight showing of Endgame, when Spider-Man came through that portal, is the biggest cheer I've heard in any film ever. And again, British cinemas don't do that. We're a shush, I'm watching my film sort of environment. People lost their shit when Spider-Man came through that portal. And then we go to Far From Home, and he's a pissant again. It should be, Pissant Man. That's what it should be called. The way Tom Watts was, I don't know, he's not writing him, but the way he was directing him, don't have me wrong. What I've loved about this is I've seen a maturity in Tom Holland in the presses. I feel like he's grown up. I believe he is a man of his own standing now. He's not the sort of yappy little dog surrounding Chris Evans, surrounding RDJ. I really felt that he had this gusto, this sense of presence of how important he was as a man. He spoke with such confidence and surety. And that's translated into what I had from this film, that there was an emotional intelligence to it, agency over his own role. He was actively making decisions. Things weren't just happening to him. This felt like he was in control. And I know the character makes poor decisions, but I felt like there was a strength in the portrayal, but also had acting dexterity that I wanted to see in the other ones. The real maturity about this performance from start to finish.
Completely agree. Can we get into some of the spoilers? Not like plot points necessarily, but like just so we can talk specifically about certain
spoilers. This is the benchmark.
Okay, so all right, here we go. So as everyone who has seen the movie now knows, we get all three. We get the multiverse. We get all three Spider-Man. Now, let me ask you: do you have any attachment? I mean, you talked about the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man. Do you have any attachment to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man? Is this something that, like, when he's revealed, is that meaningful to you?
At the time of his films, I wasn't bothered at all. I rewatched all the films before going into this, maybe a month, 2 weeks ago to a month. They're really good films. Really, really good films. Everyone talks about Spider-Man 2, and I know at the time because it was more serious in tone. and also that incredible train or tram sequence. Like, don't get me wrong, Octavius was a great,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the flawed villain, but Spider-Man 1 is probably as good as that. And when you compare it to the first X-Men film, which is absolute dog shit now, it is borderline unwatchable. Spider-Man 1 holds up equally as well. And I don't know if I'd say it's as good as 2, but it doesn't really bother me to even have that discussion. They are both really good. And also Spider-Man 3 isn't as bad as I remember it until he gets the fucking black suit. And that's when it falls apart. But it isn't the tragedy. So to answer your question, here's the thing. With Tobey Maguire, if you're to believe reports, he turned into a bit of a prick. So his reputation goes before him. I had much more emotional attachment to Andrew Garfield because he had such a bad experience with it. And to see him wearing this... And do you know what? That motherfucker tricked me, you know? I was believing him. He was getting angry with people. Like, no, it's done. I'm not answering these questions anymore. I'm not in it. I'm sorry that everyone's going to be disappointed. That motherfucker can act even in interviews. I swallowed that shit up. I was like, maybe he's not going to be in it.
Yeah. My Spider-Man is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. The first one came out like 2000. Was it 2000, 2001?
Yeah,
the original Tobey Maguire one?
Yeah.
It's like 20 years old. And it was the first live-action on-screen depiction of a Marvel movie that I think I had seen at the time.
Blade, maybe.
Say again?
Was that 90s? Was Blade in the 90s?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know if I saw Blade. Blade is in the 90s. I'm not sure I saw it. I might have been too young to go to it by myself. I don't remember exactly, or may not have been interested, but I definitely remember loving the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and I've been a fan of it for 20 years since. I always go back to them, and so when he comes through the portal, I truly, my heart was like soared. I was like, oh my fucking god. To be clear, this is the shit. This is what was spoiled to me on the push notification that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were in the movie, and I assiduously tried to avoid that to be confirmed, right? So I knew it was going to happen, but I was surprised like how emotionally affected I was by him coming through. And what's interesting is like you get to see when they're all on the same screen together, how different the personalities between the three of them are. It's not as if like each of them. The Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man has his Peter Parker is clearly different than Tobey Maguire's, which is clearly different from Tom Holland's. It's such a joy to see them all together, and they have amazing chemistry together.
Yeah, it was really good. It was so good.
It was so
good. And I love the way Tobey Maguire one comes through, and he's just, what did they call him? Like an internet preacher or something like that. A fashion, like a hip internet preacher.
Right.
Yeah. And he's got, have you got a suit, and he just pulls it down. Yeah. That's so good. It's so good.
The way the characters behave, like their behaviors are completely understandable in light if you are aware of like their characters throughout their series. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man comes in and stops Tom Holland from ultimately killing Green Goblin right at the end. That resonates, right? Because that's exactly, his journey from darkness to what he is now. And it gives it all that more additional emotional punch that Tobey Maguire comes in and does that. Especially in light of the fact that that's his villain. And Go ahead.
Absolutely loved what they did to Tom Holland in this. Like, when he's losing control, it was absolutely chilling. And you could see it coming. And what they didn't do was there was no like MacGuffins, no Chekhov's gun, nothing like this. Yep. Just by the look on his face when they were talking about him, you knew. And that's acting. That's real acting. That's fucking street. That's Russian street ballet acting. Do you know what I mean? The underground, the seedy underbelly of acting. Which actually exists because John Bernthal was sent to Russia to stop him being a naughty young man. They have acting camps in Russia that are like military ran. You know, like it's basically like the Red Room for acting. And he said, that's harder. That's harder than any training I've ever done. It's fucking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. But he was so good. Just that, like just a little inflection in his face or like a little sort of depression of an eyebrow or something. It's just so good. And to see him lose control. I don't think it's really a film of themes or anything to talk about. It's just a character arc. And with that, they're superheroes, but they're people. with Spider-Man, it's not like a Captain America or a Tony Stark where they have a industrial level of support behind them. Like they both have billions, whether it's personal wealth or the wealth of an institution behind them. Spider-Man is just a kid. So he doesn't have fail-safes. He isn't being monitored constantly. And in the same way, he's not directly responsible to anyone, especially now Tony Stark's gone. And I think the loose and fast way that Doctor Strange deals with him takes away that level of responsibility to a like father figure or mentor. And the back and forth between them was to sort of evidences that, but I liked it. I liked it so much. Like Doctor Strange is almost like the quirky uncle. Do you know what I mean? That comes around at Christmas. Like you enjoy being with him, but the kids are just embarrassed because they actually have to live with him like all day, every day, and he does not change. But because of that level of responsibility is not there.
I agree. It's such great acting. About his going sort of unhinged is the ways in which the other Spider-Man attempt to save him from the things that so badly damaged them. So like the Amazing Spider-Man saves MJ in the way that he couldn't save Gwen as a redemptive arc for him, but also as a way of like protecting Tom Holland from that fate, right? And then there's also like we already talked about the end where the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, saves Green Goblin from Tom Holland. What's so poignant about that? He's the Spider-Man that had such incredible rage, right? Like Tobey Maguire is the rageful Spider-Man.
Yes.
And so he knows what that Vengeful. Can do. And he's protecting Tom Holland. He's not saving Green Goblin, although he is. He's also saving Tom Holland's Peter Parker there. So I thought it was like the interplay between the three of them is so great, and the way they wove those character arcs throughout the entire series, right? So like the 3 current Spider-Man films, but also all the earlier iterations of this was seamless and really quite beautiful, I thought.
Going back to that Andrew Garfield scene, as soon as I saw MJ fall off the tower or the scaffolding or whatever it was, I knew immediately. I was like, this has to, like, if Andrew Garfield is in this, which, at that point, I believed he wasn't. But if he is, he has to save her. There has to be, and even in my mind, I pictured it. But what I didn't anticipate was Tom Holland going after her. And I was like, oh shit. Like, maybe she's going to die. Like, maybe this is going to be like the thing. Because I'd heard there were some heartbreaking moments. And like, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the sort of reflection of the other characters and they're going to bring him back because they've suffered the same kind of loss. But then when Garfield, oh my God, I'm like emotional talking about it. When he goes and grabs her, honestly, my lips were wobbling. My eyes were all glazed over. People were cheering, but I couldn't because if I opened my mouth, I'm going to fucking cry.
Yeah. That's one of the several scenes I actually did cry at, Matt. I thought it was so poignant, It's so good. And he's such a good actor, by the way, and she is incredible. I mean, oh man, they killed that scene. I thought. Yeah. I just loved it.
And what I liked as well, again, this wasn't a film of foreshadowing. It just hit you with gut punches. It just allowed things to happen. There was no, I mean, obviously their relationship and him being happy with her and all that kind of thing makes it more pertinent. But to be honest with you, if that happened with Unrequited Love, it would have been equally as impacting because you have the we'll never know what could have been sort of aspect of it as well. But before we get on to the supporting cast, I just want to run through a few things that stuck with me. And these aren't criticisms. They're just little nitpicky things. So the first thing was the first thing that took me out of it that made me think, okay, it reversed the spell. So anybody who knew who Peter Parker was came through. You've just got to allow it because what you can't have is a million people. But at the same time, my mind was trying to instantly think of all the people who would have known who it was, and there is an assortment from each of the films, and you brought the villains back a delta amount of time before they were murdered. So then Gwen Stacy surely serves the same purpose. And also they're just in the cinematic worlds that we know. So what about the infinitive the infinitive realities that we haven't seen that have minute differences. Why wasn't there an infinitive amount of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man? An infinitive amount of time? And I know look, I'm not asking them to change the film because it would have just made the Sublime ridiculous. They could have just worded that one sentence better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just
completely.
that little bit better. Just that little bit, because it made me start. Yeah, it did make me start thinking a little bit too much.
And then you do think about it, and I found myself like missing something because I was like, wait a second, like how's this work? You know, it's like in the movie theater, you're trying to puzzle it out. What you want to do is like just you want it to wash over you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Completely.
So another slight nitpick was the premise of curing villainy. And I think it's easier to an extent, because all of these villains have undergone some sort of procedure that changes their mental state and makes them, inverted commas, evil, as opposed to their normal persona. When you think about a running theme in the X-Men, they're always fighting a mutant cure. Mm-hmm. So it kind of asks the question, well, is it all right to cure the evil mutants? Like, that's just a part. If you break the law, we're going to cure you. Or is that just an oppressive regime? And also it puts something in the future as well, that when other characters are fighting people and they're trying to solve a problem with their fists, is there now not a rehabilitation process that's been volunteered by this film that is consequently just going to be ignored? And I understand, yes, because the film has to happen, but I thought it was quite, like, conceptually quite a big notion that we had to comprehend, and how that affects everything going forward.
Totally. Not exactly connected to that. One nitpick I had, well, I guess I had two. One is you can just shoot a villain with this like rope and just imprison them in the Sanctum Sanctorum. Like, exactly. Wow, that would solve a lot of problems, and could have solved a lot of problems in the past. And the other thing is, like, and again, this is something that I don't care about, because this is not the point of the film, but I didn't buy necessarily Doctor Strange's willingness to cast the spell in the first instance without really discussing its consequences, maybe working out exactly what Peter had in mind there, like, what are you attempting to achieve, and then all of it happening within the course of like 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah, and I'll tag on to that with the Doctor Strange as the post-credit sequence, the trailer for Doctor Strange. When I watched Captain Marvel and I was watching Nick Fury, I was sat there thinking, he is overdoing the Nick Fury persona a little bit in this. Like, I'm a little bit tired of this now. And I didn't know if it was intentional, but obviously that was it a Skrull? Yeah, it's the Skrull, wasn't it? Talos. So I didn't know if that was intentional, but I was picking up on little notes in the performance during the film. I was like, I think I've had enough of Nick Fury now, because this is just, everything's just overpronounced. Like when he says, "Bitch, please, you've been to space." I was like, it's overdoing it a little bit. But that was supposed to be improvised, so I know it's probably not intentional, but reading into it. The way that the Doctor Strange performance was, I was waiting for a reveal. One, for the reason you said. And also how he's quite an abrupt character, but he just seemed too well receiving of everything. Like, okay, kids, yeah. Okay, we'll just send the kids out to do it. It's not like he's controlling by nature. The whole thing of him against Stark was who's in charge, who has the best ideas, who's going to solve this. I didn't need your help. And now he's just gone, oh yeah, this is a really big fucking situation. Off you go, kids.
Totally. I was waiting
I was waiting for a reveal, but maybe the reveal is that he was busy with the situation that's going to be released in Multiverse of Madness. But he was just trapped, wasn't he? Falling for like an hour or something.
That's what I thought. So I couldn't tell. Well, we can talk about that scene, but I couldn't tell. That true end of credit scene was strange. Usually you get an actual scene, right, that like sets up the next film. This seemed more like at first it felt like a scene, then it just went into a trailer. It looked like, which I thought was strange, unusual, but. It looked amazing. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
Really cool.
The one thing that I picked up on as well, and this is more than a nitpick, where they left things at the end of Far From Home with the big reveal of Peter Parker, it's Spider-Man. I immediately thought to myself, well, shit, like, how's this going to work with the through flow of the films? And when you think about it, this is quite astonishing. We've had 5 MCU films since Endgame. 2 of them have been Spider-Man films. That's crazy.
Wow.
That's like Iron Man in Phase 1. And there had to be, I think, that quick turnaround because you couldn't have that overhanging in other films and whatnot, because it was quite it was a big disruption to New York, wasn't it, or Queens, or wherever he's from. So that was set up to being a massive problem, but all it was vis-a-vis for the multiverse. Like, we had to find an audio visual MacGuffin to get us to the multiverse, to create a problem for him to have to go to Strange. Sure, there was the immediate backlash. There was the police there was the reporting helicopters, there was people outside his house. But it felt that once we traversed that part of the film, and once it turned to the physical conflicts of the film, when it was, villains against heroes, that part of the film was just forgotten. Like, nobody's following him, nobody's trying to find him, there's no one trying to take pictures of him, there's nothing appearing. It's just like the whole end battle. You've got 3 Spider-Men on the Statue of Liberty, and the reporters in helicopters were there in it like the drop of a hat when they found out who Peter Parker was, but yet there's no police presence as literally the Statue of Liberty is falling apart.
Right.
And I felt that there was a very clear line where they went, right, that part of the film serviced what we needed it to service, and now we're going on to this part of the film. And I felt it was a little bit abrupt, and it was something that I noticed. But and again, people have said, why is it so important for him to have his secret identity? It goes back to what I was talking about before. He doesn't have the protection of the state, an organization, or money. So he is very vulnerable and unprotected as a hero. And I think that's a very clear separation from literally every other hero that we've seen so far.
Yeah. He doesn't live in a compound like Tony Stark. He lives in an apartment in Queens with his aunt.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
he's not like in the Avengers compound like Vision and Wanda. Or
if you're listening to this at this point, you probably have seen the movie and so know that Aunt May is killed. That really affected me. I didn't think I cared so much about like that relationship really in the prior films, but I thought it was like emotional. This is not one of the scenes I cried at, but I understood and I bought like the way this would attempt to like that would reveal Peter's underlying darkness, So I like that. And I do not think that this is an instance of someone being, fridged, refrigerated. She's a character which is like, well fleshed out in the series and also in the film. And she has her own things going, like with Happy in her career. This is not just like someone servicing Peter Parker's character arc. That's not, and it's not how I interpret it.
Did you think it was necessary to kill her, or do you think they could have had a Happy Hogan Iron Man 3 or Rhodey Civil War moment? Like, would that have been impetus enough? Did you think that Aunt May's character needed to die?
I think I don't know if she needed to die, but I like that she did, in the sense that it gave his transformation, like the rage he then had to be saved from and save himself from, was all the more real to me.
And also I don't know, I was ambivalent to it. Not it, but the choice to kill her. I was disappointed because I really liked having this Aunt May in the universe, and I was disappointed that character's story had been terminated. And I was disappointed that there would be no more of that. But I think as a plot point, it had the emotive pull it was intended to. So I don't have any complaints, only disappointed that character's not in it. This is something I was thinking about. I don't think we've ever heard Uncle Ben being mentioned in this iteration of the character. Because Stark cuts him off and says he doesn't want to hear it. Aunt May never talks about his uncle. Was she the Uncle Ben of this universe?
Only in my opinion. I mean, she says, with great power comes great responsibility. That was like a big reveal. Nod at that fact. Yeah, I think she serves that purpose in this MCU, right? In the MCU universe. Yeah, I definitely thought that.
I thought, like, ipso facto, that meant that there was never an Uncle Ben in this universe. That it was always Aunt May, like a single adopted parent sort of thing. Because there's never any references.
Although, isn't there? I feel like, if memory serves, there might be one reference, which is on like a piece of luggage. Do you remember this? Like, I'm not sure which film it was in. He has Uncle Ben's suitcase or something, because it's just a quick like shot as he's like closing a suitcase.
Right. Yeah, I do know. When they go in Far From Home, when she sneaks in the Spider-Man suit, you could be right there.
Yeah. I always thought that there was an Uncle Ben, but I do think that Aunt May is the Uncle Ben character in this universe. If that makes sense.
Yeah. When you think about Happy, he's lost a lot of people as well. Everybody talks about Wanda, and admittedly, she has lost the most. But Happy's been through a lot. And he just becomes more like resolute through it. He's almost the antithesis to Wanda. He just makes him more resolute and protective, as opposed to unhinged and demonstrative.
Totally.
I really liked his character. I actually thought it was Happy that was going to die, you know. I thought it was Happy that was going to bite it. Because non-canonically, with Jon Favreau picking up, there's rumours that him and Filoni are going to be the leaders of the Star Wars Lucas. Well, it isn't Lucas films, is it? Because that would include Indiana Jones, and they're certainly not going to be writing those films. But for the Star Wars as a studio, per se, there's talk of him stepping up and taking some responsibility away from Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe, but a lot of the ties that bound him to the MCU, Happy to the MCU, are now severed, right? I mean, Tony's gone.
Yeah.
He no longer remembers Peter, so that's severed. His character is complete for different reasons other than through death.
I mean, Tony's estate would just go to his family, wouldn't it? But it'd still need a day-to-day running. Stark Industries would still require someone at the helm. But it seemed like Happy wasn't a part of that anymore.
He's just hanging out in Queens, as far as we know, with Aunt May. Yeah.
He had a right bachelor pad as well, didn't he? He had a right little Playboy pussy old pad.
That's true.
And like games machines and all the little black leather and that kind of shit. Kinky fucker.
Right.
I think as well with the supporting cast, I have to say that I'm not either taken or not taken by Zendaya. She may well end up being a great actress, but I think sometimes there's such a buzz around somebody, and it's just a lot of people going, oh, we need Zendaya because everybody else wants Zendaya. I'm not saying she's a bad actress. There may be Zendaya films that I am unaware of where she is superb in.
Did you see Euphoria, the HBO show?
No. Didn't see that.
Oh, she's a real actor.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, is incredible. She's so good in it. But yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the point that I was circling around to was this is the first time when I thought, hang on a minute, this girl can act. She wasn't used as, not like a plot vehicle, but more of a catalyst to Peter Parker. Now they're together, he could just concentrate on being one Peter and two Spider-Man. The first one was good because she was the Mardy bum of the group. And then in the second one, I didn't like the will they, won't they. I just didn't like it. I found it annoying. But what I like about the MCU, and this is when I first noticed it, they didn't do the arsehole stepfather thing in Ant-Man. He was a good guy, and they all ended up getting on and they respected each other. And it was it felt fresh and modern and refreshing. The Zendaya MJ, when you look at what a selfish Mardy bitch, who was in the first one?
Kirsten
Dunst. She is a pain in the arse. Like, does she just, like, he's Spider-Man. He might not be able to come and see your play. Like, can you not fucking understand what he's going through and trying to fit together as a young man and keep you happy? What a bitch. Yeah. And she is so fucking selfish as well, all the way through the film. Even when it's just her and Peter, she's making him jump through him. Nobody could not realise that Peter Parker loves her. But again, with Zendaya, she was just a supportive partner. There was no unnecessary friction. There was no emotional adversity there. And I loved that. And I loved that she became a character in her own right in the same way that Ned's been from the very, very beginning of it. I really, really liked how she was portrayed in this film. And which also made the emotional punch at the end when everybody forgets everybody forgets who he is. My dad said that's the moment that broke him when he goes into the diner at the end and she doesn't recognize him. My dad was like, it broke me
completely. And you can tell, in my opinion, from the very beginning of the series, it's set up in the first movie where she's sort of like the cynic the whole time. That is masking like a truly deep vulnerability, which is really truly revealed in this movie, where she talks about she finally lets go of the fact that you can hope for something good, right? It's not just if you expect disappointment, you won't be disappointed. She abandons that, right? Her cynicism is masking something like a deeply mature, emotional person. And that's paid off at the end, where I'm with your dad. The scene where he goes and tells them, like, tells MJ and Ned that they're not going to remember him, and like that. Oh my god! Like, even talking about it now, I'm like tearing up a little bit. And then the diner scene, I felt was like completely overwhelming. Oh my god, it was incredible. I loved it. I loved her character.
About that
my favorite MJ.
Well.
By far.
The emotional growth that he shows at that point, where he's been acting completely emotively throughout the film and making rash decisions, that finally he goes in and he's just like, oh, okay, I'll just walk away from it.
Yeah, and actually, now that we're talking about it, I didn't think about this at the time, but that fact that he puts the paper back in his pocket, like that fact that he rehearsed what he was going to say to her, is set off against that. He goes to the MIT like lady, and he gives her a little speech in the car, and she's like, "You didn't rehearse this at all, did you?" And he gives the speech then. Yeah, I didn't even think of that until right now. It shows that growth.
But I think I have deep appreciation with what they did with the villains. Like, sure, a couple of them were kind of bench warmers. Sandman, pretty much bench warmer. Lizard, pretty much bench warmer.
Yep.
But the other three, in Green Goblin, Octavius, and who's the other one, Tim?
Electra?
They all have really clear, distinct, individual character arcs. They're not just moustache twiddling villains that are hocked up on villainy and evil. We really see the duplicity in each of their characters. They all show that they are capable of reform. They're also attached to their identities in a certain way, that like it's still a part of them.
Totally. And the fact that they're tied, each of them are tied to their, in some ways, to their previous selves, but also in some ways to their villainous selves. There's a certain tragedy to their arcs in that respect.
Yeah,
which I thought like was very well done. And they really did. The filmmakers. I don't think it's like some big decision to set Sandman and Lizard on the bench for the most part, and to feature the other three more. That's what I would have done, but I think it really made a lot of sense because in the comics, especially, like the Goblin and the Doc Ock character, those are like the classic kind of like Spider-Man villains, and they've been so well developed in the previous movies, so it made complete sense to do it that way. And I agree, they were fleshed out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and re-flesh them out in this movie.
I'll tell you one thing that's just come to mind, another little nitpick, is all Sandman wanted to do was get home. And he, at the beginning, he was like, I don't care what happens to the rest of you, I'm getting home to my daughter, right? And then at the end of it, he's campaigning against it because he's trying to get the Spider-Man, which by default would then mean that he couldn't get home. It didn't put him in conflict with the other villains as much as it could have done. He was just very much speaking to camera, I want to get home to my daughter. And there wasn't then somebody else saying, well, you're not fucking this up for us. They were all kind of like independently addressing Ned and MJ and Peter. There was no adversary generated between them for that. So that was one thing that I've just realised I found slightly curious.
But no, that's a good point. Right.
Because at the heart of it, when you look at all those villains, they are all super intelligent, qualified people. There's none of them that are just dipshits. Maybe Sandman, you could probably say, like he was a bit of a down and out, but the other ones are all super intelligent, like a victim of their own creativity, if nothing else.
Right. Again, enhancing the tragic nature of it. I mean,
I can't believe it's taken us this long to get round to this. This is like the big talking point. With the introduction of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, those individual scenes when they appear.
The Andrew Garfield one is so funny. It's like, I loved that whole scene was so great because we've talked many times about how like the down moments. I mean, to make the down the sort of more intimate moments resonant, you have to have like the big set pieces, right, to set off against them. But we've talked a lot about how those like moments in the MCU, people just hanging around a table. In some ways, the best version of that, where he's just like so on target, Andrew Garfield. It's like so funny, it's so punchy. MJ and Ned are so great in that film. In that scene where he's like climbing the wall and they're trying to like get him to, to say like, "Are you actually Peter Parker?" And he has to. It's so good.
This is so good. Right? And he's like, "Okay, just get that cobweb," and he's like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like hanging on two fingers, isn't he?
He's like hanging from the ceiling by his hand. That's not enough for MJ.
Yeah,
It's great. Yeah. How do you feel like it ranks for you overall, MCU wise?
I don't know. I've been asking myself that question quite a lot. The problem is that I probably overrated in the literal meaning of that. I overrated some of the early ones
Yeah.
because everything was so fresh. Where I was probably a standard iteration over each of the IMDb scores consistently. So the escalation of quality to the end of phase 2 was so distinct that it sort of changed the rules a little bit. I feel like phase 3 not so good. I've been underwhelmed by this phase so far, so it's hard to put it in context because there's so many films now. There's a context of what each had to achieve, and I think it's a solid 8 or 9 out of 10, but where that is contextually with everything that goes before it, I'm really struggling to rate. Let's put it this way. When I first got my 3D projector, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy every day for a week because it was the only 3D film I had. When something's that good, you know the jokes, but it's the anticipation of them and not the immediate effect of the jokes and the punchlines that comes through, and it's still enjoyable. I felt the same with this as I did coming out of Guardians of the Galaxy, but I've not had the opportunity. Once I know everything that's coming and the effects of all those things, how does it stand without those surprises and the emotional impact? In a year's time, when I've watched it 10 times, I'll be able to answer that better. But it's in the upper third, upper quarter. It's up there with the best of the MCU. That's how I feel about it now. How I'd rank it, I've got no idea.
Yeah. I'm the same with. It's hard to rank them. I have them like in tiers, kind of. You know, it's like I would definitely put in the top tier along with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I have Endgame in the top tier. Hard to say because maybe I'm overrating this or maybe I'm not. You know, the earlier movies, for instance, when I saw Thor, I had no expectations for it. I didn't really know much about the MCU. I'd seen Iron Man. I just didn't know, right? I was so surprised by how much I liked it that I got a really good grade for me at the time. But there were no expectations at the time. Whereas here, it's like you have the entire MCU behind it, including things that are like truly great, like Endgame and Guardians of the Galaxy. And nonetheless, I thought it was incredible. The MCU as a whole has ramped up expectations that it's difficult for a movie to meet them at this point, but this one did. So it makes me wonder that like maybe I feel so great about it now, but maybe I will continue to feel great about it because my expectations for the entire project is so high, you know?
God, we've not even spoken about the Daredevil appearance. With that Daredevil appearance, kind of pointless, wasn't it? You could take it out and the film still works.
Almost completely forgot about that. And it is potentially like maybe a little bit of nitpick for me because I didn't see it. It served no purpose at all. Hey, here I am in the MCU. Yeah,
I'm about done, Tim. I don't know if you've got much else to say.
Me too.
Good stuff. So,
no. Do you want to talk about for a minute or two about the mid-credit scene?
I thought it was curious, to be honest with you. I was screaming at the screen how is Vulture in both universes, but the symbiote had to be left in one when Venom went back to the other? I didn't understand that. It didn't make sense. I struggled to work it out. I don't know. I know at face value, it's he went in universe and left in universe. I don't get it. Like the Clintars are race anyway, so the two things could happen independently. Yeah, it made me scratch my head a bit.
Completely.
Yeah. I don't think that the Venom films aren't that good enough for it to be like, oh my god, Tom Hardy's in the MCU. Like, okay, you're great.
Exactly.
Yeah, fine.
I'm like a little bit down on the Tom Hardy Venom movies, so I don't know. And I'm so high on these right now. It's just like, let's not poison the water. Let's just keep this separate. You don't have to do this. I get why they're doing it and stuff. I mean, why they want to. They're all very successful, but this is an economic proposition. But I don't know. And so I wasn't per se disappointed with the scene. I thought the scene was actually kind of funny. But I do not want.
Oh, yeah,
I don't want to.
He was explaining the heroes, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. Yeah, I did enjoy that. Yeah. That part was good, but the impacts of it, I wasn't too bothered about. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed our discussion about Spider-Man: No Way Home as much as we enjoyed the film, but not likely because I mean that would be stalkerish because we very much enjoyed it, as you heard. Again, if you made it to the end, please subscribe, like, follow, comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, then the podcast is available on all your favourite platforms, and we are the end_pod Pod on social media. If you can't find us through The End, then look for Spank Media. The End, ignore all the erotica, and you'll find us somewhere on that list. So, that only leaves me one thing to say. We have been, and this is The End.
All right.
Good job, mate.